New Hornets head coach James Borrego brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to Charlotte, where he's looking to inject some excitement and enthusiasm with a fast-paced style of basketball suited for a young, athletic team. Hornets radio play-by-play man Chris Kroeger sits down with JB for this week's Hornets.com Coaches Show.
Hornets 2-2 on the young season. We're just over a week into the NBA season, and we continue a 4-game Eastern Conference road trip. Bulls will close it out, and Hornets off to a good start, 2-1 on this trip. And we're joined by head coach James Borrego. And coach, we'll go back all the way to last Wednesday night. There was a lot of energy in that crowd. Took about a half, I think, to bring it out of them. But since that point forward, I think you've sort of settled in on what you want Hornets basketball to be over the last week.
Yeah, I think that first quarter, we were a little dazed, and Milwaukee came out aggressive, made shots, but really from that first quarter on, we settled in. I think we won the next 9.5 quarters going into the Miami third quarter. So I think we started to see what we can become. Solid first week. We know we're far from where we want to be, but making progress, making strides. A little bit of a disappointment last night in Toronto, but we'll pick ourselves up, be resilient, and get ready for tomorrow night.
So you've talked at times about your assistant coaching staff and how they're in charge of some of the big picture, because now as a head coach you get caught in the moment-to-moment stuff and the day-to-day things. What's that been like for you now, just 4 games in, being on the end of the bench now as the guy? You've
Right.
been in other positions on the bench over the years, but now just living in the moment-to-moment and the grind of an NBA schedule.
It's a lot. I mean, I don't think we're even a week in, and it feels like we played, a month already. So, you have to rely on your staff. I love my staff. They do a great job. I trust them. They have a voice in practice. Our guys love being around them. It's a great balance. It's a long season. They don't want to just hear my voice. It can't be one voice. They'll start to tune me out. Yeah, we're working through it. We're learning as a staff, how we're going to work. But so far, we're off to a good start. And I think we just got to continue to get better every single day. And today we did, with our practice. The gym is still healthy. Guys got a good workout out there. So every day, just let's stay after it.
I know you look at the schedule, and every team feels like, there are pockets of our schedule that really are going to be tough to navigate. But right out of the gates, 4 or 5 on the road. But to open with a sweep on a back-to-back, and it was conducive from a travel standpoint in Orlando and Miami, but still Miami has had this team's number, and to gut it out in grand fashion in the fourth quarter on Saturday night. Just those 2 games in particular, what did that mean from a character standpoint?
Well, I think the response from game 1, disappointing game 1 at home, had a layup and an open 3 to win it. We were all disappointed going into game 2, Orlando. And to go in on the road, any road win in the NBA is a good win. I don't care what type of team you have or who you're playing. Any road win in the NBA is a really big win. So we went into Orlando, played 4 quarters, won every quarter. The guys really responded from game 1, so that was real encouraging, positive. Then we built on that one. We went into Miami, and we knew what we faced there. Obviously, the history there with that club being 0-6 in the last 6 going into that game, on the road again back-to-back. Really proud of our guys. The way they came out, the way they started that game, competitive. They were engaged from the start. Really set the tone for the entire game. And then the game flipped, just like game 1. Mm-hmm. We were down, we flipped it on them. Miami did the same thing on us. It's a long 48-minute game, but for our guys still to respond in those last final moments to win that game on the road speaks to their character and who we are as a team.
When you took this job, you knew immediately you had a special talent in point guard in Kemba Walker, one of the most lethal shooters at his position in the NBA. It's changed the way teams defend him. You would envision getting even better quality looks for him out on the court, spacing the floor, and through 3 games to see him at that point hit 19 3-point field goals, be shooting 50% from 3 to total 106 points. I don't even know if you could have imagined that it would come that easily in 3 games. And it's going to be difficult. Teams are already starting to counter, but still, what have you seen from Kemba through the opening week that just stands out to you?
Well, I'll take it back even further. I can't think of another player that's sort of changed his shot and become the type of shooter he is, especially off the dribble that he's done here in his career. To come in as not known as a big-time shooter out of college, to sort of transform as a player And as a shooter, it's just a tremendous amount of credit to him and how he's worked, because he can shoot, catch, and shoot, and he can shoot off the dribble now. I didn't know he could shoot it this well off the dribble. And I think that's where the evolution of his game has taken him. And it's what creates so many problems for these other teams right now. So, yeah, we're going to have to move him around. I didn't expect this start. I love the start. And now we got to be ready to counter, because a lot of teams are going to start to put more pressure on him. We've worked on that the last couple of days. Obviously, Toronto's a very good defense. They made it tough for us last night. But we're going to have to get better as the league, tries to take away what we're trying to do. We got to get better, but I think Kemba's willing to do that, and he's that type of player. We have those type of players around him, and he'll continue to trust that. But I'm just really happy for him, proud of him, how he started, how he has set the tone for this entire season.
Well, we get a home and home with the Bulls Wednesday night and Friday night. We'll close out the road trip. We'll keep talking with JB, and we'll continue after this right here on our Hornets Coaches Show.
The shimmy. Got it. Kemba. Yes! Hornets come the other way. Kemba works the baseline. Finds Marvin. Kemba scoots inside. Marvin. Oh my! Kemba's gonna fire. Oh my! Out of town. Kemba, three-pointer. Got it.
We're back on our Hornets.com Coaches Show. Chris Kroeger. We're joined by Hornets head coach James Borrego. We're trying to round out a 4-game Eastern Conference road trip. Hornets 2-2 through the first 4 games of the season, 2-1 on this trip, and it'll be the Bulls Wednesday night in Chicago at United Center, and then come back home Friday and play them at Spectrum Center. And before we talk about that matchup, Coach, we talked about Kemba. MKG, I think, has been a guy that's been a pretty bright spot for this team through the first 4 games, and you've asked a lot of him, going to the bench, playing the 4-man spot now, and I think he's really answered the call at every spot, and everywhere you look, it just seems like he's around the ball on both ends of the court right now.
Well, he can affect the game in so many ways, not just the scoring. He could score 1 point, no points, and still have a major impact on the game. That's a special player. You like having those type of guys on your roster. Makes winning plays every single night. To have the block shots in Miami, the verticality, he's been a major part of our defense right now, and we knew that going in. We knew he was a major defender, but for him to embrace this role, come off the bench after being a career starter for the most part, is just a tremendous amount of credit to him and his ability to be a team first guy. He was all in. He has not questioned anything we've done. He just wants to win games. So he's evolving as we go, and then this is a new NBA, and I think he's thriving in this new system, in this new role. I think he's only going to get better in it. He's one of those guys that, for our fans, you're like, well, what's he like? And he asks a lot of questions. He's very curious. Coach, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And he really just wants to know and understand the game at another level. So tremendous guy to have around, a great spirit, and really, really excited for his start to the season.
So we'll talk about this Bulls squad. We know we will not see Lauri Markkanen. He's out dealing with an injury to start the season, and also Chris Dunn is going to be out for the next few weeks, so we won't see him, and he's been a guy that can really chunk up a game defensively. He's got that kind of quality to his game. But Zach LaVine, I think, is where it starts and stops for this team right now. He's in the early going, been explosive offensively, just the same way Kemba has. What do you see with LaVine's game? Because he's started to grow and I think and mature over the last little bit here for the Bulls.
Well, he can just make shots anywhere. He's instant offense. He can score in transition, at the rim, and at threes. And he's kind of what you're looking at in the NBA today, a guy that can shoot it from range. He's scoring a number of points at the three-point line, and then his next is at the rim. And he's got the mid-range game, but he's really living at the rim and three right now. It's going to put a lot of pressure on our defense. We'll be keyed in on him and trying to slow him down. But as a group, we got to get better from last night. We got to improve our transition defense. We gave up 31 transition points last night. We'd only given up 26 on the season going into last night's game. We gave up 31 in one game. So our defense starts there, and LaVine's going to be a major part of our transition defensive focus tomorrow night.
And you talk about your defense setting up your offense. To that point, you're outscored 31-5 on the break, and so the 31 points allowed, obviously, that's a no-no for you. But also, you're not getting those stops denies you guys buckets on the offensive end too. That's got to be something that helps each other out on both ends of the court.
Yeah, we want to obviously get our fast break points up every single game. We want to play at that pace, that level, and you got to give Toronto credit. They got back, they set their defense. They're a very good defensive team, a long athletic group, so they made it tough on us. But for us to be a good offense, we've got to get stops and get out and run. When we're always taking the ball out of the net, we're in the half court, teams can load up on Kemba, load up on our shooters, make it tougher on us. Tomorrow night we got to defend with an urgency and a spirit that allows us to get out and run. And if we do that, we typically get good shots.
So talk about your defense in the half court. You guys are now switching predominantly, almost 1 through 5 in certain situations. But what do you think of how guys are grasping that new scheme, and also maybe at times what that's allowed on the three-point line? Because we've seen in stretches happen with Toronto last night, also in that opener against Milwaukee, they were able to get some quality looks from three. So how's that affecting things on the defensive end so far?
Yeah, we're a work in progress. The switching is something that we're all getting accustomed to, and we're working on it. Teams make it tough. A team like Toronto, if you can stay matched up, they give you problems. If you switch, they give you problems. It's just what keeps us most aggressive. And I think for the most part, going into last night, we're doing a pretty good job. So we don't want to go away from it. We just got to get better, learn from last night, and be ready for Chicago, because Chicago, they see what we do. They're going to try to expose what our schemes. But I expect our guys to come out and respond tomorrow night.
Hornets head coach James Borrego with us on our Hornets.com Coaches Show. We'll take another break. We'll be back, and we'll continue and let you know what's coming up this week after this.
Hornets fans always ask, what do our broadcasters do in the offseason? I kind of get the feeling Eric's struggling to fill the time.
Oh, this is interesting. Zach comes in. He knows his way around the kitchen. He's been here 3 years now. What's he going to choose? You got the original. You got the breakfast blend. I think there's a French roast. He's going to go with the French roast! My goodness! How do you do?
We roll on with our Hornets.com Coaches Show. Chris Kroeger. I'm joined by my radio partner, Matt Carroll, former Bobcat, 10-year vet in the NBA. And Matt, we'll look ahead to what's going to be closing out this Eastern Conference road trip. But let's look back. We're a week into the season now at this point, and 2-2, 2-1 on a 4-game road trip. I think all things considered, the Hornets have gotten off to a pretty good start so far.
Yeah, Chris, I think 2-2 with to have Milwaukee to open up with, one of the top teams in the East, is not easy, and took them down to the wire. Then to hit the road for a 4-game swing is tough to start the season, especially with the new coach, new staff, new system. So it takes some time, but I've been impressed with this team and how they've played early on.
Yeah, it starts with Kemba. He's taken his game already to another level, 2-time All-Star, and he looks like he's dying to get back to a third All-Star game in Charlotte this year. And then I think you look at some of the pieces around him. Malik Monk providing double-digit scoring off the bench. He's been looking for that sidekick. I think you might have had it now in Malik, and you look at even a guy like MKG who's shifted to the bench, and he's just everywhere. And I think this new system, getting up and down the court in transition on both ends of the court, offense and defense, and crashing the boards, finding those second chance opportunities, and being somebody that's a help defender. I think all those things seem to fit what MKG can do in this game.
No, I agree 100%. I think obviously Kemba speaks for itself. Player of the week, everybody's proud of him for that. But he's been spectacular, setting records. It's just fun to see him have so much success early on, and you can tell, starting like that, it's going to carry over, and it's going to be a great season for Kemba. But you go back to MKG, Malik Monk, that second unit. I think that's what I think has caught the eye of everyone who's been following the Hornets. I mean, when you have a second unit that can really come in and sometimes get a lead, maintain a lead, but just brings an energy, a youngness, a fresh legs that plays really hard, and I think it starts with MKG especially.
Yeah, and even Miles, I think we've seen early on, especially in preseason play, Miles looked very mature. And there were times where he's been able to get out on the court and assert himself, and other times where he hasn't been able to, and that's being a rookie in the NBA. But you can see even with him, he's got this competitiveness to him and a frame to be able to get out there and compete. And even Miles, I think, you think about where the bench is now, where could this bench be in a couple of months, and Miles Bridges, and how does he fit into something like that?
I'll tell you what, Chris, Miles Bridges, he's a walking highlight film. When he's on the court, you're just waiting for it. You turn on SportsCenter, you're going to see him. If he plays in that game, you're going to see him on SportsCenter, because He's going to have a dunk, an incredible play. But he has such elite athleticism. He plays with so much energy, and he's so bouncy. He's young. He's fun to watch. But where I've been really impressed with him is his ability to shoot the basketball. You know, he's making threes. He's hitting shots. He can defend because of his athleticism, his size. And also, watching him closely, he's got a great feel for the game. He's been well coached from Michigan State with Tom Izzo, but he really does things when you watch him in film that is impressive for a young player.
And we can't talk about the bench without the guy that I really think is the head of the snake, which is Tony Parker. And you might look at his scoring, you think, well, he's only averaging a few points per game, but you go and look at what he does that, you know, really the box score won't indicate, and his feel for the game and knowing how to manipulate the game and knowing where to be on the floor and how to draw defenders to him to create shots for his teammates and just to get everybody generally organized. I mean, it's something that just jumps off the screen when you're watching Tony Parker play.
Yeah, Tony Parker, I mean, I look at him as an extension to Coach JB's coaching staff, you know, on the court, and he fits in so well with the young players. You know, what he does, he keeps them calm, keeps them composed, and he knows the system. Those guys have been together, Coach JB and Tony, for years in San Antonio, so he is like a coach on the floor. He really helps that second unit just understand the game, and you can see him during practice and during the games teaching them, you know, and telling them, hey, and he does it in a way that is great because he doesn't offend anybody. He has that quiet demeanor about him, but he's very demanding. And when you're an NBA champion and an all-star, you can expect that from him.
And to your point, go back to that Milwaukee game. Obviously, it was a tough loss at the end, but the Hornets got down 20 in that game. And the next day, before we went on the road to Orlando and Miami for a back-to-back, Nick Batum, Tony Parker, and Kemba Walker spent an extra hour with the coaching staff after film session with their own film session. And Nick credited that extra hour with what he did in Orlando on Friday night and what they're able to do in Miami on Saturday as well. And those are the things that you get with Tony Parker. And I saw a moment against Toronto on Monday night where the bench got the Hornets back into the game. It was a few possession game, and Tony got checked out, and Kemba was checking back in, and Kemba walks on the court, and Tony said, me? I'm checking out? And Coach said, yeah, you're checking out. And he just, you know, he had that, I just want to, he wanted to stay out there. He could sense the game was starting to turn a little bit. He felt like he was a part of that. But you just love the competitive spirit of a guy who's 18 years into this league.
Yeah, he hasn't lost any competitiveness. You see that in practice. You saw that in the game. I could see it on his face. He did not want to come out, but, you know, he respects the call. And, you know, I think also with Nick Batum, you know, Tony Parker, you know, being good friends, number one, and having that respect for each other, but also playing in a national team. They've had a lot of experience playing together, and he brings the best out, I think, in Nick Batum, you know, and that'll be great as the season rolls along, you know, to have the leadership with Tony. Even though he's playing in the second unit, he still is working with Nick and teaching him things, and he's an 18-year vet, so he's teaching everybody something, but I think his leadership rubs off on the whole team.
Well, we'll talk about the Bulls matchup. It's a home-and-home Wednesday and then Friday, and then it's the second back-to-back of the season. We're going to go to Philly on Saturday night. Before we do that, Hornets30.com. Great website. We have all sorts of awesome content up there. You can go back and look through all sorts of old photo galleries, all sorts of great video clips that we have up there. And during the summer, we are pushing people to the website to vote for their top 10 Hornets of all time. It's a very subjective list because what is top 10 to you? Is it longevity? Is it highlight reel moments? Is it your impact in a short span? Right. And so our Hornets history and Bobcats history that you were a part of, you could make arguments for all sorts of guys. I mean, I could put a list together of 20 players that you could say have a legitimate case to be top 10 in Hornets history. We've started to unveil this list. Al Jefferson came in at number 10. At number 9, we've had Kendall Gill, and now we're starting to see some other guys come into the mix. And Baron Davis is a guy that's now been on our top 10 list. So how do you feel about our top 10 list, Matt? Because we put this up to the fans, and so we're going to have, I think, maybe some players say, hey, wait, I thought I was the top 10 player in Hornets and Bobcats.
Yeah, I figured I'm a little sad because I figured if I had any chance, it was probably number 10.
That's where you would have made the cut.
Yeah, I think that was a cut. I think anything in 9, 8, 7 is getting a little bit too close to the top. So I think my chances are dwindling down. So sad there, but it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I'm looking at the players that have already made it. I mean, Al was phenomenal his time here. I didn't have a chance to play, you know, with Al, but, you know, just respect what he did in Charlotte and taking those teams to the playoffs and being a leader. And you brought up a good point with Al, is an all-NBA player. Yes. And how many players could you say that about in Charlotte basketball history? And to be, even as a third-team All-NBA, you're voted one of the 15 best players in the NBA. I mean, that's beyond a crowning achievement for a player. 100%. Third-team NBA, so much respect for that. But I think Big Al, too, what he meant to this team. You know, he was a veteran, he was a leader. Yep. Kemba looked up to him, and he really helped the young guys. But he was the type of guy in the game where you could give the ball to, and something good was going to happen. You know, he was just in the prime of his career when he was here. Kendall Gill, I didn't have a chance to obviously play with him, a little bit older than me, but had some good years here in Charlotte, and well loved by the fans, and a very talented player, can put a lot of points up offensively. I can speak a lot on Gerald Wallace. You know, Gerald Wallace I played with through most of my career here in Charlotte, and you know, Crash. I mean, he was one of the most competitive guys I've been around. Battled with him a lot in practice, head to head, and obviously playing with him on the court. But just loved to play with him. Loved his drive, his competitiveness, his toughness, sacrificing his body. He was a human highlight reel. He does some things as far as dunks and blocks and exciting plays that drove the fans crazy in excitement. So proud of Gerald and happy he's on that list.
And I always think of Big Pat when I hear Gerald. G-Force, Gerald Wallace.
Yes,
and
yes.
Gerald, you know, I think you look at him as a guy in the expansion era again of NBA basketball here to be the first All-Star. I mean, I remember when he got that All-Star appearance, what it meant to him, I think what it meant to our franchise at the time. So that shouldn't be lost on anybody either. And then, yeah, Baron Davis, who spent 3 years here, really burst onto the scene as a rookie, as a guy on a veteran team, which allowed him, I think, to blossom. And then his athleticism really started to take off. He was an all-star his final season here, averaged over 20 points per game, was shooting north of 35% from three, and he was a human highlight reel himself. I mean, you saw him night after night ending up on SportsCenter top 10s with just putting guys on posters. There was a dunk he put Kevin Garnett on a poster to this day, which I still think is one of the greatest dunks in Hornets history. So it's been fun. We're going to see who keeps being unveiled in our top 10. And, of course, you guys can check out all that content. It's at Hornets30.com. We got a back-to-back Friday, Saturday, but not before we close out a 4-game road trip. And I think anytime you talk about a road trip in the NBA, especially anything north of 4 games, you go 500 on a road trip, you've done good work. And the Hornets have already secured that. They have an opportunity to really put themselves in a great spot with a win. It's not going to be easy at United Center Wednesday night, but we will know we will not see Chris Dunn. We will not see Lauri Markkanen. Zach LaVine, though, is the 3rd leading scorer in the NBA at 32 points per game. Kemba comes in and tied for first with Nikola Mirotic from the Pelicans, of all people.
Right.
And so you look at where things are at right now. This is a big game, and you'll see him again on Friday. And I think the Hornets know they need to bounce back after what happened in Toronto on Monday night.
Yeah, Chris, I think this is a huge game. You know, to finish this road trip, it's a great opportunity to get a win. You know, a little banged up as this Bulls team, and you know that's okay for the Hornets. You know, we'll take that early on in the season, and if they can win this game and go 3-1, that's a great road trip. So we're encouraged about tomorrow night's game.
It's got to start on defense, though, right? We talked about the fast break advantage for Toronto on Monday night, 31-5. So you got to get stops, you got to make life difficult, but that's going to open up the offense. And so I think we saw it in Orlando on Friday night. They were challenged, the starters especially, to get up in that game defensively. They did it right from the get-go and really made life easy. I think that's got to be the game again on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think so. I think after the Milwaukee game, Coach really challenged the starting unit, and they responded, and they stepped up and came out ready to play and play great in Orlando. And I think coming off their loss in Toronto, this team has been challenged again today in practice. So I think the same thing you're going to see again is these guys will respond. They're veterans. They know what they need to do, and they want to finish this road trip with a win. All
right, Matt Carroll, and we'll do a little selfish plug. You can listen to our radio call. It'll be on at 8 o'clock Eastern time. We got extended pregame at 7:30, but you can listen on our Hornets mobile app. You can listen all the time on our Hornets mobile app. Of course, Eric, Dell, Stephanie will have the TV call. Their pregame begins on Fox Sports Southeast starting at 7:30 with pregame, and then we're back at home. Feels like we haven't been to Spectrum Center in forever. Friday night. We'll be back there to take on the Bulls. That'll be a 7 o'clock tip-off, and then the Sixers will be on Saturday night. But you can catch that all on our Hornets mobile app. And, of course, find us on YouTube and Hornets.com. This has been our Hornets.com Coaches Show.
Be here. To get your 2018 season membership, call 704-HORNETS. This is Buzz City.